Welcome to the Way We Capture podcast. I'm your host, Zachariah Rock. I'm a photographer and self-development mentor for a lot of people who are looking to further their skills and improve their quality of life. The Way We Capture is a podcast that aims to provide guidance and support to individuals looking to improve their photography skills. The podcast focuses on self-development and also discusses the future of technology and image processing. Today's guest is Mike Ying. Mike, his main message is smash procrastination. He is an online writer and he does a lot of marketing. Mike has a great worldview on how online business works, individuals, and self-development. So today we're getting right into it with Mike. Hope you enjoy the show. So first and foremost, I just wanted to, kind of thank you for the support you've been giving me on the platforms, whether it's writing, photography, kind of all of the above. It's been really cool to see how your writing has progressed over the past couple of months. And, I love what you do. That's just all I wanted to say first and foremost.
Thanks. Yeah,
Of course, man.
I also really love your pictures. Like I see your pictures on Twitter, and yeah, I mean I'm not very familiar with photography and stuff, but yeah, every time I look at your pictures, it's always amazed me. It's like really nice.
That's awesome to hear. There we go. That's a little bit better. Let's get that. Okay. So being a writer, I know that you have kind of this process like most writers do. And me, myself, I started out as a visual artist. I wanted to get a little bit more into writing. But there is kind of like money Twitter, essentially. There's kind of like this movement going on where everybody is a content creator. Everybody's a writer nowadays. So I had one major question to start off with. The Way We Capture is my photography podcast, but it's kind of it's like layers. Like there's photography, art, and then more or less self-improvement. And it seems like you having this message of smashing procrastination, that is massive for most people, especially in this modern age. Modern men, women, like people are kind of sucked into their iPhone, sucked into their, tablets, the Netflix, the video games, whatever it may be. So just to start off, what is like your main message to the viewers?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing is that people don't believe that they can improve. I think that's like a really big thing. Because people might say, "Oh, I procrastinate," and they don't believe they can do anything about it. Like just go with the motion. They have these routines, and they say like, oh, "I'm addicted to junk food. I don't know. I drink every day and then feel bad every day." But uh, like, I think most people are like stuck in a place and they don't really believe they can improve. Um, so yeah, I think one of my main messages would be like, yes, you can improve. Um, and yeah, there are so many like um, so much good content and good influencers already that talk about it. Like for example, like James Clear with Atomic Habits, you can change your habits and
That was a massive one for me too. So yeah, I love that. I love that you mentioned that. So how about you tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to be and how you started writing on Twitter?
hmm. um yeah, so yeah, actually why I started writing on Twitter is because sometimes before I was writing on Facebook, I just like shared my thoughts or wrote some random posts about weight loss or things like that. Um, or I just wrote to myself some ideas, and I realized that I really enjoyed it. And also, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos for years, and I really love content. And I also thought of becoming a content creator. I started writing like a blog for a while, for a bit, but then I stopped. And then I made YouTube videos, but then I also stopped because it was not going anywhere. And I was doing these fitness YouTube videos, but at some point I was not so passionate about fitness anymore. So I was trying to find
Been
something
there.
else.
I've been there. It comes in waves for sure. So
Yeah.
between fitness YouTube, kind of having to pivot essentially, what made you fall on writing on Twitter? Is it like, and just like when did you get your start? That's more or less what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. So yeah, for me it all started when I watched this interview with Craig Clemens's YouTube channel. He has this interview with Nicolas Cole, and um, Nicolas Cole shares his story about writing online and how actually it's like possible to make a living by just writing. So, and they also mentioned his book, and then I read his book, The Art of Online Writing or Business Online Writing. I don't remember. And yeah, then I was really hooked in the business model. Like build an audience first, and then based on the feedback you receive, you'll be able to build a business because you have an audience and you know what they want.
That
And I
personal
was really
brand
hooked.
mindset. Yeah, I see it. I love that, man. So keep
Yeah.
going. Didn't mean to interrupt.
And yeah, then I saw that they had this cohort called Ship 30 for 30, and they were saying that Twitter is the best platforms to start with writing. So yeah, I joined like this this writing cohort, and uh, and yeah, that's how I started with Twitter. And um, yeah, in the 30-day cohort, I was only just like writing random posts, like these essays, and yeah, I didn't get much traction. But uh, even after 30 days, I kept writing and writing and writing, um, and yeah, at some point, um, yeah, I also joined Danco's Modern Mastery community, where
Yeah, been in there myself. Yep. It's a big one.
yeah, and there I learned about more about like uh, there's like a Twitter course there. So I started learning more about the Twitter algorithm, like what kind of post works, um, all those kind of things. And I also realized that almost all my content, what I write about, is procrastination. So that's when I realized like, okay, the topic I write about the most is procrastination, and then it's meditation. And
Okay. I actually didn't know that. I figured it was just a lot of procrastination, more on like self development, but meditation plays a huge role. But maybe I've seen some of it. I mean, there's so much content out there on Twitter now. And I've just been like, I've scrolled through a lot of your tweets recently. I've been getting, I got your last newsletter finally. I finally sent it over to my email. So I was reading through that. But what got you into meditation? Where was your roots in that?
um, yeah, so yeah, that's probably something else. Like I started meditating in uh, on January 2019. Like I started meditating 3 minutes a day, and then yeah, after one session, was like, oh, it actually feels nice, and I kept going. I meditated every day for 30 days, then I started like doing 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then eventually got to like 20 minutes. And I was also researching a lot, like how to meditate better. And it was actually very hard to find like a good content about like advanced techniques and why you meditate. And um, yeah, at some point I also discovered Eckhart Tolle. I read The Power of Now, and then I really got into
Oh
like
yeah.
spirituality and why you can be present and why um, and yeah,
Oh,
all these
I love it, man.
yeah, my worldview changed, and yeah, that's why I also like meditation.
I have a very similar story of like as you. I'm kind of choking up over my words, but I'm
Nice.
just so excited because I love when people kind of have similar experiences, similar emotions that come from that, and it changes your whole belief system completely. So with Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now, I read that, and I think that was about 2019 or similar time, and I started getting into meditation. But for me, it I had such a hyperactive brain, always wanted to keep swapping activities and whatnot. Like, oh, I'm playing video games, or I'm, going and playing sports or doing something. I couldn't like dial in on one thing. So I found photography. I had similar structures that got set up for me. And I remember there was a tweet you wrote about you playing Valorant, and you were just like stuck always doing that in the same cycle. And I resonated with it. But then you practice mindfulness and kind of being in the present, which is a lot of what Eckhart Tolle's message is. And that was profound. That like essentially changed my life. That was the book that kind of pushed me to where I am today, which I find so many people have that experience or they hate that
Mhm.
book. There's no in between. And so I love the fact that you just said that.
That's awesome.
So I had some questions for you based on your writing because I know that I've seen a lot of people who write in the style of modern mastery on Twitter. I'm sure you can kind of pick it up, like people who have maybe learned a little bit, like just love the content Danco puts out. But there is always like one piece of literature that people read and it kind of transforms their work. But at the same time, it's like you have this original idea. So, as a writer, here's the question: as a writer, how do you balance the desire to create original work with the inevitable influence of your literary heroes? Because it is so real. But I love intelligent imitation. I think that's such a huge concept in my writing alone because I try to imitate a lot of great photographers with my artwork. So trying to transform that into writing it's a little bit of a challenge and struggle, but it's really hard to stray away from it and be original.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I think I mostly try to be original. Yeah, I always pick ideas from everywhere. Um, and sometimes I share similar ideas with like different words, or um, sometimes I add like more story or more analogies to it. Um, yeah, it's. Can you be more specific about the
Sorry,
question? It's a
yeah.
bit
So
hard
it's
for me. Yeah.
what is the most profound piece of writing that you've had that you've wrote yourself and you've had this experience with it? Um, how did it shape your approach to new writing?
Mm, like you mean transformed by writing itself?
Yes. Like when you've wrote something that was so brilliant, just incredible writing that has led you down to a new stage of writing essentially.
Hmm. I don't think I really have that.
Not yet. Maybe you do. You just gotta dig deep.
um, yeah. I would say the interesting thing is that when I start writing, I never know what it will be when it is done. Like so, every time I write, it's like something new that creates itself. Um, so for me, the transformation is more in the writing itself, because yeah, every time I write and publish something, like It feels like it's like creating something new that I didn't know I had in me, or like I didn't know like these thoughts would connect and create something that's like can be a tweet, for example.
Like that. I like that a lot. So moving on to more of like your message instead of just like the basis of writing, your message is smash procrastination. Would you say that's like your primary message that you want to get out to the world?
Yes. So yeah, I niche down like to like procrastination because like that's the main problem I always struggled with, and I want to focus my message on solving that problem. And I think it also makes more sense business wise to uh like keep it to like one niche, one problem. Um yeah.
I like that. That's really insightful. So as I'm starting to see our brains, you and I work very differently. You're a very focused person, and I scatterbrain quite a bit. But there are times where I get into like seasons of intensity, as Danco calls it, where my focus just got dials down. I get more done in about like 3 months than I would in 9, and so that's kind of like a little problem that I've been dealing with in my life here. But do you have any practical advice for avoiding burnout?
Mm, yeah, I never really struggled with burnout because I never really force myself to do something I don't want. I heard someone say that usually burnout is when you're out of control or you are not doing what you want. So you put all these hours in, but it's actually not what you want to do. Um, and yeah, for example, um, I like John DeMartini's content, and he says that if he could spend 24 hours a day researching, educating, teaching, traveling. Um, so yeah, I think it's a lot about uh, are the things you are doing aligned with your vision, with your values, with your interest? Is it actually what you want to do, or is it something that you force yourself to do?
That is fantastic advice. That is fantastic. I think a lot of people need to hear that. um, so I know that your hobbies are writing and you work out quite a bit. You exercise, and your girlfriend Maria cooks. That's about as much as the personal details I know about you. Do you have any other hobbies out there?
um, yeah, actually, I've been like I haven't been working out for like I don't know, like 1 year, but recently we started working out again with my girlfriend. It's been like 10 days. We go 5 times a week, but like the months before, I haven't done any workouts actually. Um,
It's really hard to balance it, I find, especially when you're trying to put yourself into something like, writing, for instance, and just the deep work. But I find with my brain, it works. If I work out, I get more done. If I don't work out, I kind of don't want to like do anything hard for the day. I want to kind of be like confined to my creature comforts. I hate to admit that, but it's so much how it works in my mind. But so you've been dating your girlfriend Maria for about a year, right? Around that
yeah.
time frame, right? How has she changed your world in regards to chasing your writing dream?
Hmm. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, having a girlfriend is like a game changer in everything. Um, she's been, yeah, very supportive with everything. Also, she really supports me to like, yeah, pursue my dreams, have my own business, and um, yeah. For example, recently I was like hesitant about taking more freelancing work because I'm also digital marketer. I manage Facebook ads for people, but I wanted to go all in on creating content and focus on that. And yeah, she was very supportive of me, like, and even like pushing me to follow my dreams. And yeah, she cooks every day, which for me is like a game changer too. um, like, not only because uh, like it would take me a lot of time, but also because she cooks very healthy. And uh, yeah, actually, I didn't really realize that, but once we started eating healthy, uh, like, I started being much more productive, feeling a lot better. And yeah, because when you eat junk food, like, you eat and you have this carb crash, or like, I don't know, crash, and you feel like shit. Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
yeah, you do feel like shit.
uh
That is, it's so so true, and that's a game changer for a lot of people. But to me, like I get stuck in these like cycles of seeing, like I get really judgmental, but then like I feel like like who am I to judge people, But at the same time, like I'll see like my little brother, he'll go like eat McDonald's or some fast food, and then he'll just like, oh, I don't feel good, and it's like connect the dots, connect the dots.
yeah.
But that's awesome. I relate to a lot of what you say. Like when you have a woman in your life, they magnify and just multiply the extent of which you're capable of producing. But that's like a double-edged sword as well. They could always make your life hell and a lot more miserable depending on the partner you pick. So I always think that's a really important decision that most people kind of have to make. How old are you, Mike, by the way?
Yeah, I'm 29.
You're
I
29.
will be
Okay.
30 in 1 month.
All right. I was thinking like 25, 24, but yeah, I just turned 23 yesterday. So I got a lot of my 20s left to live. And so hopefully I kind of live it correctly and plan it out. But um, it's just kind of profound. That's all I can really have to say is like life is just kind of this strange journey that we go on. And hopefully we can like accumulate the right people and right souls in our life to kind of enhance it and make it better.
Yeah, it's all a journey. And yeah, you're still very young. Like, yeah, it's yeah, it's weird to think about. Like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm 29, and yeah, yeah, some people are like really crushing it, like in the, like, early 20s. Yeah.
Comparison is the thief of joy. I love that quote. And so
Yeah.
it's so real, like you get out of that mindset. Like people my age, 23, 22, especially in the US, people have social media as just like this highlight reel for the success that they achieve, but you don't see a lot in the background of like the grief, the despair, like the emotion, the negative things they're going through. So I always just try not to compare myself. I think honestly for 29, a girlfriend, you're eating good, your writing is so good too, that I think you're crushing it, man. So there's a
Thank you.
lot of questions that I have. What is it? It's about 11:25 right now. So we got about another half hour of chatting. Uh, with the writing, do you have any like specific authors besides the ones we've already discussed that you just really love and that you kind of have their voice in your head?
um mm, there are some books like I really love, like, for example, Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. uh Actually, I like that book more than Atomic Habits. For me, it was more life changing, um, because, yeah, I love that book because he also talks about motivation, feeling good, and he has this. Yeah, yeah, actually, yeah, just resonated with that book more, and he really dissects. He also has this model of habits with, like, depends on action and motivation and how And if you have like a task that you have high action, I know ability. So if you have high motivation and high ability, um, then you will be able to do the task. But if it's something that's you have low motivation and it requires like a lot of effort, you won't be able to do it. But usually you can always uh, increase your ability or decrease the effort of the task and make it very easy. And yeah, so yeah, that's been very insightful. Other books, like I really love Benjamin Hardy's books. Um, for example, Personality Isn't Permanent, uh, Who Not How, and Willpower Doesn't Work. Uh, his
Actually, I
books
haven't
are
read any of those. I might need to go to Amazon and buy some books.
yeah, I like how he writes. It's really enjoyable to read. The first book I read is Personality Isn't Permanent, and really talks about how uh, people can get stuck in they do like a personality test, and then they get stuck on, oh, okay, I can't do this, and I can, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. But yeah, the big mistake there is that your personality can change, and even if you have some weaknesses, then you can overcome them. And then yeah, there are kinds of things that uh, that can help.
I like that a lot. I do believe that your personality can change. Have you taken like the 16 personalities test?
Yeah,
Yeah. What did you score?
I'm a INFP.
Really? I'm an ENFJ. So the
Okay.
the introverted extroverted thing always cracks me up because I'm always like, I don't know if I agree with that, but at some point, it must be real. I relate a lot to a lot of introverts. A lot of my close friends are introverts. They have very different thinking levels of thinking compared to a lot of the extroverts that I meet in this world. INFP. I'm trying to think. I use that to kind of gauge a lot of people's strengths and weaknesses because I really feel like
Hmm.
it's spot on for the most part.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's really good. Like, yeah, the conclusions and the strengths and weaknesses.
Self
Yeah, the
awareness.
only yeah, it's really good. I think the only trap people fall into is that they can't change. Like if and they yeah, like they get stuck in like one thing. Like
When I was in high school, I was about 16, and they used to have us take those tests in English, you know, and I took it maybe last year sometime, and it was really, I remember my one in high school, and then compared to now, I just remember it changing a little bit more on how I approach the world. And so I think it's interesting to use that as like a metering tool to where, okay, I'm here, this is where I'm at now, so I can kind of see the level of growth between my strengths and weaknesses and how I've changed personality wise. um, Self-awareness is a business hack that is super, you hear everyone say that, it's super common.
hmm,
I just think it's kind of a faucet to live your life by. I mean, a lot of people in this world, they're very much plugged into modern distractions. And so knowing yourself is like part of the battle, knowing your enemy is another part of the battle. And in business, like it's all war essentially, but I don't always like define it as that. We're all making treaties with one another, experiencing life on the same scale but with different novel perspectives. So with your writing and on being on Twitter, who is somebody you like look up to in the writing space, kind of outside of like a lot of the big names?
um, on Twitter specifically, I like, yeah, Danko. I think my favorite writer on Twitter is Dakota Robertson. Uh,
He's
I
he's
really
also
like his
mine.
tweets.
Oh yeah, his tweets
Yeah.
are phenomenal. He's actually taught me more than a college degree. So
Yeah.
I saw a clip the other day of it was a YouTube short, and him and Dan got on a podcast with these guys called House Party, and they introduced him. They're like, "Oh, we're doing a podcast with Dan Coe's friend," and I just thought it was so funny because instead of calling him Dakota Robertson, wrongs to right, he's got his own brand and whatnot. They're just like, he's Dan Coe's friend. That's how we're gonna introduce him. But I got a couple more questions just to pick your brain, because I know how I love how you think, especially with the whole procrastination message that you have going on. So as a writer, and even just as an artist in general, because writing is an art form, we have either imposter syndrome, a harsh inner critic, and I have it personally with my photography. I feel like I'm a photographer, I'm still doing this, like, or I'm capable of doing it. People have paid me to take photographs, sell artwork. So the imposter syndrome for me, there's moments where you can defeat it, and there's moments where I feel like it conquers you, and it's all how you handle the everyday interactions with your craft and what you do. So how do you manage your inner critic when you're writing? Are there any strategies or mental models that you go through to push yourself through, like, the doubt and writer's block?
For imposter syndrome specifically, yeah, like I also feel like, okay, I will never have a PhD in like psychology, or like I will never be the, I don't know, psychiatrist who had like 10,000 procrastination patients, or I will never be the researcher who has been researching procrastination for 20 years. And yeah, that always like hits me a bit, but I always try to remember these different concepts. Like, for example, like you only need to be a few steps ahead to teach someone. 90% of people are beginners, so you can always teach 90% of people. And also the concept of learning in public that I really like, because so basically you learn and you simply share what you learn. Also Gary Vee popularized this concept of don't create, document. So instead of trying to come up with original things, you simply document your journey, which is, I think, very valuable for people. I always love to see people's stories, journeys, their progress, and what they learn. And yeah, there's also this popular concept now of like writing to yourself, like writing to who you were before. And
Yeah, that's me for the most part. Spend a lot of time writing to myself and like, dude, you need to do this, you need to do this. Um, what I'm trying to think. Joey Justice. Are you familiar with
yeah,
Joey Justice? Did you see that thread that he wrote about him and his weight loss journey?
yeah, it's
It was
awesome.
incredible.
Yeah.
It was so great. I read it all, and I'm like, holy crap, he's literally like this. He's a big guy on Twitter. He's like one of Dan Coe's best friends. He does the work. He's an incredible neuroscience guy with motivation and whatnot. And so listening to some of the podcasts and YouTube video stuff he's been huge for me. I kind of like to adapt some of my writing content to what he has, but seeing him, it's almost like he's struggling with imposter syndrome, because he's went through a lot of it. But those mental models that you just suggested, I fucking love. Like, excuse my language, but I fucking love them. Because like that's a lot of those I resonated with. Like I use that in my everyday life. But just the constant being reminded of like basic things like that, like stoicism, for instance. All it is, it's like it's not really anything too crazy in the idea world, but there is those basics that just need to be reinforced in our brains, because we're stuck around stimulation all day long. Like most jobs nowadays, you're sitting in front of a desk or at a computer screen. People are just attached to their phones and eating junk food, like we said. So remembering those mental models are really difficult unless you have a system in place to succeed and excel. But that 90% of beginners thing, that's something I'm struggling with because I always see like everyone's a photographer online. Like photography is huge, writing's huge. They're both really saturated, but the novel perspective that you can provide and the originality is what's so important. I feel like my writing isn't up to par with my photography. My photography I find is really, it's different, like I've developed my own unique style. So I'm just really excited to get to like a stage like where you're at, where you're like, yeah, my writing's original. Like this is me documenting my life, And so that's something I'm actively working on, is how do I improve my writing? How do I get to a point where, like I love writing. That's something I want to do this year a lot more, is like write every single day, develop more of a writing habit. But it's been really beneficial for me to like get my thoughts on paper, get my confidence up on like just appearing on camera and doing stuff like this, because I'm always the guy behind the camera, never like in front of it. So it's really strange to be like sitting here on a podcast that I'm just like pushing myself, getting out of my comfort zone. So I'm super grateful for you being on the podcast today, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's my first time doing something like this too, and yeah, it's great. And yeah, I want to ask you, like, what's your because you say you want to write every day. Like, why do you want to write every day?
I want to write every day because I really just want to be the best version of myself. But I also, my interests change so much that when I write, I have more of a clear conscience of what am I pursuing? What am I actively trying to build? And I've lived in such like probably before 2018, 2019, I lived in such a victim mindset of the world. Like, why is this happening to me? I wasn't very disciplined. I struggled with all sorts of issues. So when I developed a writing habit, it made me realize, oh, wow, I can look back on last year and kind of understand the thought process that I was going through. Who am I blaming? Who's the victim in my world, And so the ultimate responsibility mindset, where it's like, well, everything's on me. Oh, the reason that didn't work out is because it's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. That's so much easier than trying to like put all this time and attention into like the micro habits or the micro things. So it's essentially like a blunt overhaul of my thinking system. But with writing more, I feel like I want to teach and provide value, right? So a lot of what I believe we're here for in this world is to kind of educate the next generation or pass along the knowledge we've learned and the wisdom. So I love talking to older generations, like people in their 70s and 80s, to see their novel perspective on the world. And even though it may not be correct in my eyes, it's still something they've went through and lived through. And you can't you have to validate their experiences essentially because they've lived for so long. So with developing a writing habit, it's like public journaling. Okay, where was I in 2022 for my photography and my writing skills? Okay, how do I get better at that? Okay, now that I'm better, I can educate the 90% or educate people 3 steps behind me. But you can't really educate and measure unless you have like that system in place. But it's just, you meet so many incredible people through writing. Like, for instance, I met Henry Lai. He's incredible, like talking to him and whatnot. And there's a couple others, but the photography space on Twitter, I don't know if you've ever seen some of that. It's kind of big, but at the same time, it's not like money Twitter. But the photography Twitter space in 2021, 2022, that got me really hyped up to meet people online and explore like different people with my thinking structures who share similar experiences and emotions, obviously. But it's really hard because you find in your like metropolitan area or just like the small town that you live in or wherever you grew up, it's hard to find people who want to achieve the same level of success. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I'm still super young, just came out of high school about 5 years ago. So, and I still do live in my hometown, I love my hometown. And some people are like, oh, I hate it, I need to move out. And I see a bunch of threads online like, move out of your hometown, it's the best thing you can do, or your hometown and your environment will kill you. And it's like, well, I've actually thrived here. So it's kind of like counterintuitive for me to go move to somewhere else. And I'm sure I could grow, but there's a certain level of appreciation that I have for where I live. So it is what it is. But the writing habit, that's how you can connect with other people. Like, oh, I went through that, or wow, that was emotionally driven writing that caught my attention. No, now I'm gonna follow. Now I want to read more, and that's how I was with you. To be completely honest, I was like, oh, smash procrastination, like sign me up. I need that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, seems like, yeah, you like connect with other people's writing, and then you also get feedback on your own writing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I never really.
I started
Yeah.
a newsletter. And so when I
Mm,
was reading yours, I connected with I was like, wow, he tells a great story. Like how do I get better at storytelling in a newsletter that's so like it's either hit or miss, people are gonna miss it or they're gonna open it. So yeah, sorry. You continue on.
no, you keep going. Like, where do you want to go with this?
I mean, we can. It's just it's newsletter stuff. It's nitty gritty.
When did you start your newsletter?
I started the newsletter maybe about 3 weeks ago. Actually, I've like had ideas. I've written it out. Like, hey, this is how I want to structure a newsletter. But I've never like, hey, press the button, come sign up. Like that was just big for me. It's like, oh, if you have a newsletter, that means like you're kind of doing it. You're kind of writing. If people start signing up, it's like, oh well, people actually want to like read what I have to offer. So for me, it was like a big imposter syndrome. It's like, am I really am I capable of making a newsletter and doing this? So I signed up for a lot of newsletters on Twitter. I just started reading them all the time. Like, how are people doing this? What's the credentials that these people are having for doing so? But that's the thing. You don't need any credentials. You just start writing, and that was big for me to learn.
Hmm. And what's your plan and your goal with your newsletter?
I think it is to get to a point where I can kind of promote this podcast as well as just kind of discuss what I've been learning throughout the week. I really like Ben Meir, System Sunday. You familiar with
Hmm.
him?
No, no.
Yeah. Well, so System Sunday, he's a guy who just he has this podcast. It's like 7 things I learned this week or what I've learned this week, and then there's some other guys who do something similar, and I just think it's really interesting. It's like, oh yeah, well I learned this week, and so it's a different model, but I also love storytelling. I mean, hence the photography for the most part. So it's just so much going on up here, trying to combine them all into one and make sure that everything's connected. So but
Hmm.
I got one more question, and then we'll wrap up the podcast for the most part. So
Sure.
it's it's a little big. I wrote out a bunch of them. So how do you approach writing characters who are like vast, like people who write in a very different mindset than you, or like they have different perspectives? How do you approach that? Like, what is your mindset behind it? Like, do you have like an open mind? Do you try to like pick apart what they've wrote? Like, is there any writing out there that you disagree with?
Mm, I I don't think so. I mean, there are for sure writers I like more than others, but um, no, I can't really think of like. For me, what matters the most when I'm reading something is like, do I find it interesting? Do I actually like it? Have I gotten some value? And is it enjoyable to read? These are my main factors I watch. Um, yeah, so I'm not sure. Like, can you be more specific about the question?
Um, so let's say you're scrolling on Twitter and you see like a thread, and there's maybe some ideas that are very counter into like they counter a lot of like your belief systems. How do you go about that? Like, do you take like their perspective into account into your writing the next time? Because a lot of whenever we have beliefs that are countered, we have like a fight or flight response. How did you like mitigate that in your writing, or how did you navigate
Ah,
through that field, thinking that there might be like a counter argument to what you have written?
mm. That's interesting. Yeah. Um, so if there's something I disagree with, and I don't like, usually I just leave it be. That won't get a like from me. That's it. And
Good man. Good man. That is
but
the peaceful approach. I love that.
yeah, like one thing is that if like there is some common beliefs or common patterns, like um that I see, like for example, there is this yeah, for example, there is this trend like motivation is a myth. You just need discipline. I feel like uh, it's a very nuanced thing, and I don't completely agree with that. So I'm thinking of like creating content that's controversial and uh, goes against that idea, for example. Um, yeah, because it's also important to be polarizing and maybe a bit controversial. And yeah, that's a thing to look for, like common patterns or common beliefs or some trends that you can be controversial about and still still provide value once, uh, and kind of be right in a sense.
I I agree with that. Yeah. There's a lot of that, like it's all a perspective, right? And some people's perspectives can be right and they can also be wrong. And so it's such a double-edged sword. I find that there's certain writers online who maybe they don't hold like compassion and empathy in as like a very high like thing in their like list. It's like I try to have empathy for almost everybody from different walks of life, because I myself, like I required empathy at a point in my life when I was, maybe not the most conscious being in the world. Um, I find that there are some people who maybe didn't go down like a lot of the power of now route when they started writing on Twitter. And it almost kind of shows a lot of the time, because it's more,
Mhm.
it's like a negativity bias that they're aligning with more times than not, or they're always just looking to make money rather than providing value or getting good at the skill of writing. So it's like, oh, like they jump on the copywriting niche, like, oh, there's tons of money to be made. Like, look at how much money these people are making. I can do that, instead of they're not focusing on the right things. It's like, how do we provide value and kind of further like do our job in this very fragile life to provide as much help to others as possible. And so it's basis like it's a selfish worldview or it's a selfless worldview, and some people they align themselves with one or another.
Yeah, for sure.
I can
Um,
already tell from a lot of us talking together that you're a very selfless person.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to help, but yeah, yeah, I don't like content that's yeah, like not trying to provide value or just being controversial for the sake of being
Yeah.
controversial.
We're on the
Um,
same wavelength with that. I'm like, come on, like really? Like you're just doing it for clicks at this point. But aligning to that negativity bias is huge. The vast majority of people online, they want to, oh, something negative, sure, let's, it's like reading into the news too much or whatever.
yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna end the podcast, but I got one more question, because we talked about cooking over DMs. If there's one standout meal from your childhood that your mother used to cook, what would that be?
So it's my godmother who raised me, and she was Hungarian, so she
Okay.
only cooked Hungarian food. And um, I have like two favorite dishes. One of them is beef with onions. It's um, so like so it's like a nice like slice of beef that you put half in flour and spices, and then you sear half of it, and then there is there's kind of like a stew base with onions, like really thin onions, and a lot of spices. And then you slow cook the beef in that stew base of onions in like a pressure cooker for like more than 1 hour or something. And that will make the beef like super tender. Also, yeah, pressure cooking plus also the onions make the beef really tender. And then you eat that with fried onions. So you put onions in flour and then in the oil and plus French fries. And you also get a lot of sauce with the meat, well, because it has like a big stew base, and it also takes all the flavor from the meat. So you have this like super tender beef with a lot of sauce, French fries, and fried onions. And yeah, that's one of my
Sounds good.
favorites.
This sounds so good. Ooh, alrighty. So once again, everyone, Mike Ying, Smash Procrastination. Go follow him on Twitter. There will be some ats in the show notes below. But Mike, once again, dude, thank you. It's been so awesome to connect with you in chat. I will be keeping an eye out on some of the work that you're producing. But yeah, is there anything you want to say before you head out?
No, I think that's it.
He's covered everything. I appreciate you, man.